What's up, YouTube? I'm here doing my prediction video for UFC Fight Night Holm versus Aldana. The first fight is Luigi, I can't say his last name, versus Jessen Ayarna. And to me, I think Jessen is just a little bit better everywhere. I think both these guys are striker jiu-jitsu dudes overall. And to me, Luigi hasn't fought in like 2 years. I think both these guys haven't fought in a while. But at the end of the day, to me, Luigi is, in his first fight, he got knocked out pretty quick by Mike Perry. As where Jessen, all of his fights have been pretty close decisions, and he came in with a lot of experience, and I just think that's what's going to be the big difference in this fight. I think he's got more experience, and I think he's just a little bit better of a striker jiu-jitsu dude, so I'm leaning slightly towards Jessen. Next is Casey Kennedy versus Heli. I can't say his last name. And to me, Heli, we've seen since he entered the UFC, he's looked pretty solid. He's a good boxer, wrestler. And I think this is another fight where they're pretty similar style-wise. I think Casey Kennedy, though, is just a little bit stronger of a grappler. I think that in terms of the striking, he's got a little bit more reach, too, that he uses effectively. He uses his reach really well. And like I said, I just think it's another fight where it's like these guys are pretty similar, but I think Casey Kennedy's just a little bit better everywhere, especially in terms of the overall grappling. And because of that, I think he's just going to edge out a pretty clear 30-27 decision. Next is Loma Lumbuki versus Jin Hoifui. And to me, I think this is two strikers, and I think Loma's just the much better striker. I think Loma's a little bit smaller, but we've seen she makes up for her size disadvantage with just a significant striking advantage. And I think that's what this fight's going to be. I think it's going to be back and forth striking. I think Jin might try a few takedowns, but I think Loma keeps on the feet and just wins a pretty dominant decision. Next is Jordan Williams versus Nazardine, I think. I can't say his last name. I think people might be sleeping on Nazardine. His record is like 8 or 9-2, and he's beaten some solid people, and he's only lost to pretty decent people, and he's pretty well rounded. Like, don't be shocked if Nazardine can win this fight. I think Jordan will win this fight. I think that it's primarily a really strong striker in Jordan versus, Nazardine, who's more well-rounded. He's not amazing anywhere, but he's solid everywhere. Yeah, like, I think Jordan will stuff the takedowns and win by knockout, but I would also not be shocked that if Nazardine takes this to the ground, he can win by submission. But yeah, my official pick is Williams. I think he keeps on the feet and wins by knockout in either the first or second round. Next is Charles Jourdain versus Josh Columba. And to me, I think Josh, I know in his UFC debut, he was clearly a featherweight fighting a lightweight, and he looked like he was significantly smaller than the dude he was fighting. I just didn't see anything overall amazing from him. I think that he's a pretty decent striker, but to me, Charles Jourdain, he's been super impressive. In his UFC debut, he was also clearly a featherweight fighting a lightweight. But then in his last two fights, it was featherweights versus featherweights, and he looks like a really, really strong striker. His only weakness is that he kind of, his takedown defense could be a little bit better. But it's not like he's a horrible grappler or anything like that. It's just he was fighting a really strong wrestler in Andre Fili, because he has a win over the Korean Do Ho Choi and then a loss to Andre Fili. But his striking looked amazing in both of those fights. And to me, Josh is not this amazing wrestler. He's primarily striker himself. And I just think Charles Jourdain's the better striker. Because, like I said, in his last two fights, he looked like the better striker in both those fights. I think he just gave up takedowns against Fili. But yeah, I'm leaning towards Charles. I think that Charles Jourdain, since this fight's probably going to be standing, I think he's going to win by knockout or TKO sooner or later. I think he's just the better striker. Next is Carlos Condit versus Court McGee. And to me, this fight can honestly go either way. I think both these guys are clearly past their prime. They're both still okay fighters, but it's like a striker jiu-jitsu dude versus a striker wrestler. And really, it's just kind of whoever can keep the fight where they want it. I think that overall striking, Carlos Condit definitely has a slight advantage. In terms of the overall grappling, Court has the wrestling advantage, but I think Carlos has the jiu-jitsu advantage. I really see this fight going either way. I'm leaning slightly towards Carlos just because I think of his higher finishing percentage. He might catch a submission or win by knockout. But yeah, I could easily see Court just grinding out a decision by pinning him against the fence or pinning him on the ground. But I'm leaning towards Carlos Condit. I think he wins by knockout or TKO in the second or third round. Next is Kyler Phillips versus Cameron Else. And to me, Cameron looks like he's pretty solid everywhere. He's a good striker and submission guy. I just think Kyler Phillips is better everywhere. I think Kyler Phillips is a strong, like, it's either karate or taekwondo style of striking and really good jiu-jitsu. His biggest problem, in my opinion, was that he was a little undersized. He looked like a guy who could use a little bit more, like, muscle. Not like a Tyron Woodley physique, but just more mass. And it seems like he put that on. In his UFC debut, he looked like he clearly put on some mass. And, his overall grappling just looked significantly improved because that's what Dustin Poirier did. You know what I mean? Like he put on the right kind of muscle when he moved up from featherweight to lightweight, and it really helped him. And I think that's what happened to Kyler Phillips. I think Kyler Phillips put on the right kind of muscle that just made him a bit denser, and he doesn't look as skin and all that shit like when he did on the Ultimate Fighter. And I think Kyler Phillips is a real threat now, and I think that Cameron. He has a shot at winning anywhere in this fight. I just think he's fighting a guy who's a little bit better everywhere. And I don't know if Kyler will finish Cameron, but I think he does win at least a dominant decision or maybe gets a late submission. So I'm leaning towards with Kyler Phillips. On to the main part. The first fight is Daquan Townsend versus Dusko Todorok. To me, Dusko, I think, is just the much better fighter overall. I think he's the better I don't know if he's the better striker. I mean, he's the better technical striker. But definitely he's the much better grappler. And we've seen Daquan struggle with that repeatedly. I think guys that are able to just take him down whenever they want can usually dominate him. And I think that's what we're going to see in this fight. I think Dusko is going to be able to hit takedowns whenever he needs to. And on the feet, like I said, I think Dusko is going to have a little bit more volume. And he's just going to edge out all 3 rounds. I don't think he finishes Daquan. Daquan's only been finished like once or twice in his whole career. But other than that, I think Dusko wins a really dominant decision. Next is Jermaine Demandamy versus Juliana Pena. And this fight is basically the first takedown is going to show everything in this fight. If Juliana can't take Jermaine down right away, then Jermaine's just going to light her up and eventually knock her out. And vice versa. If Juliana can take her down and hold her down, then it's just going to be the Amanda Nunes fight all over again. So this fight is so tough because it's like really, I mean, I would never bet on a fight like this because that's the type of fight this is. It's like the first takedown is really going to dictate this entire fight probably. And I'm leaning towards Jermaine. I think that if she's improved her takedown defense, then in terms of striking, this isn't even close. She's just going to dust Juliana eventually. I think she's significantly better in the striking than Juliana Pena is. And to me, Juliana, I personally don't think she's as good as she used to be. In her last fight, she really didn't look that amazing. I felt like everything seemed kind of off. It felt like she did enough to win, but she doesn't look like how she did like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's because she had a couple of knee injuries that kept her out for a long time. And I don't think her wrestling and overall grappling is at the level it used to be. And I think Jermaine will be able to keep it on the feet. And I think, like I said, if it's just a striking match, I think Jermaine's going to win all day. Next is Yorgan De Castro versus Carlos Felipe. And to me, I think this is just going to be a striking fight between 2 solid strikers. I just think Yorgan De Castro is a little bit better. In all honesty, Carlos, I think he definitely has good striking technique. I just think Yorgan's faster. And I think that speed is going to be the big difference. I think that his counter-punching and his ability to get in and out is just a little bit better. Carlos probably has a little bit better technique, but I'm just leaning towards Yorgan's speed and athleticism, and I think he's going to catch Carlos in the first or second round and win by knockout. Finally, on the main event, it's Holly Holm versus Irina Aldana, and to me, Irina Aldana has definitely improved overall. She's looked really solid, but I still think Holly Holm is just the much better striker. I don't think Irina Aldana is the greatest wrestler. She has okay jiu-jitsu now, but I think in terms of punching power, Aldana definitely has the advantage, but I think other than that, I think Holm's the much faster fighter, and I think she's the much more technical striker. And I think unless she gets caught by a big shot, Holm can pretty much dance around Aldana however she wants for 5 rounds, and at the very least win 3 of the 5 rounds, if not more. And because of that, I'm leaning towards Holly Holm to win a pretty clear-cut, unanimous decision. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.